would like to call this committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. A moment of silence. So if everybody would rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you. Tammy, I believe we've already done this, but let's officially do a roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Sharon Warden.
Present.
Pam Pereza.
Here.
George Archuleta. I see you, Mr. Archuleta. Ms. Houston.
Present.
Mr. Daniel Spence.
Present.
Mr. Rodney Walton.
Here.
And Dr. Sheila Williams.
Here.
Everyone is here, Ms. Warden.
Thank you. And with that, Ms. Houston, could you read the ethics awareness and identification of conflicts statement forward? Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As a public servant, it is our duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage our personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflict or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board this afternoon? Let the record show that no conflicts exist.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Now I need a motion from the floor for approval of the agenda and a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And I'll second it.
We will vote by roll call. Ms. Sawyer.
Pam Pereza.
Yes.
George Archuleta.
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
And Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. It carries.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our financial committee meeting. And we have the privilege of hearing from Ms. Wilkins, our Director of Maintenance. If anyone has any questions about any of those items on that report, you have the floor at this time. I do have a question. So, Ms. Wilkins.
Yes, ma'am. What is your question?
I noticed that the Edgewood facility had a wet floor from a leak, and there was a cleaning done, I guess, was it carpet?
The carpet that was cleaned was actually the media center at Pasquotank Elementary.
Okay,
there was a leak, yes, ma'am, at the Edgewood Center, but it was because the gutter had backed up into the building.
Okay, but the cleaning of the carpet was at
Pasquotank Elementary.
Okay, I had a question about that then, the mold situation, because I remember when we had a leak like that at Northeastern and mold developed under the carpet, even after the cleaning. So I just wanted to comment on that and possibly have you touch base with the persons who had cleaned the carpet to reassure that we won't have any issue with that.
It was treated with treatment to keep that from happening, Ms. Warden.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
You're
very
certainly
much.
welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Makes me feel much better. That's all the questions I had. Anybody else for Ms. Wilkins? Okay, Ms. Wilkins, thank you so much for your report, and you're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our financial update report and also several different things that, as always, that our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Haynes, has to present for us. So, Ms. Haynes, it's yours.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Perez, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members, good afternoon. We wanted to start today with an update for this quarter. So today we wanted to go over our state coronavirus relief funds and let you know where we are and some of the things that we spent those funds on. Give a quick quarterly update and then talk about the 2021-2022 budget. So the slide in front of you now is a summary of our state coronavirus relief funds. I know we've talked about these some in several meetings. These are the funds that came to us from the state. Overall, we received $1,330,500. We've been speaking of these as CRF, so they're known as CRF funds. When initially allotted, these funds were extremely restrictive. In December, we were given flexibility to transfer the funds between CRF allotments and even receive some of these allotments as late as December. On the left, under initial allotment, is the amount that we were allotted per PRC. And on the right, you'll see the final allotment after transfers. So this is where we ended in December, and we have spent these funds. So are there any questions in general about CRF funds? Okay, Tim, if you go to the next slide, please. Here are some of the things that we've spent these funds on. We did have a summer jumpstart program. We had 104 participants. There were professional development opportunities this summer for teachers, at least 2 key events. We've contracted with 3 nurses to add nursing staff to the schools. We purchased 580 math manipulative kits. We purchased 924 Chromebooks, 37 iPads, repair parts and pieces for technology. Next slide, please. Atypical equipment for child nutrition. So these would be things that they needed to be able to serve students in both remote and the face-to-face environment. So some additional equipment such as like some of the freezers that they have, some packaging materials, those types of things. We purchased hotspots. We also had state-provided hotspots, and we know that we received donations for hotspots as well. Additional support for our Exceptional Children's Department. PPE, mainly for the schools, so this would be those desk shields, masks, the face shields, some of those things. Additional signage that was needed in the schools, and then classroom and instructional supplies so that each student would have their own items and not have to share. Next slide. And then overall, just to give you an update of where we are in our budget overall. So as you can see, we are 51.15% overall spent, and we're about halfway through the year. So that's where we'd want to be. And especially in our state and our local current expense fund, you'd see that we're over 50%. So we are right on track as far as spending goes. And then finally, just to give you an update on the 2021-2022 budget, this is the calendar that the board approved back in December. In January, we said that we would give you an update at each committee meeting. And so this month, we are to have meetings with schools and departments. And we have those meetings scheduled this coming week. So we are on track with the 2021-2022 budget planning season. And that concludes the update. Are there any questions on the update?
Ms. Haynes, I have a question really quick, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible you can give us more information on the professional development for teachers over the summer?
Dr. Spencer could give you a lot more information on the professional development that the teachers participated in over the summer. Dr. Spencer?
So in answer to your question, we did have Summer Jumpstart monies. And what we did is we facilitated a virtual conference for our teachers. It's the first conference that we've ever had virtually, to my knowledge. And what we did is we offered 2 days of professional learning based on things that would help them be more successful, their students in that online learning environment. So we offered things that helped with Canvas support. We offered the science of reading for approximately 100 elementary teachers. We offered some additional supports in some of the programs that we already have, because what we wanted to do is not purchase additional programs, but utilize the programs that we had already had and make sure that our teachers had a really good, clear understanding of how to utilize those programs to best meet the needs of the students. So that was in Edgenuity, that was in iReady, just things that would help support the teachers moving forward. Additionally, the teachers were paid a stipend because those were outside of their contractual hours. And so a lot of those sessions were also recorded in the event that teachers needed those later on. And then we have provided professional development throughout the year to support what we had started in the summer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to, or any other questions, I guess, for Amy? Rodney?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to just ask, did you receive the funds for preschool that the state provided? Did the district receive those funds as well? That like they submitted to daycares and preschools, did the district receive funds as well?
The preschool incentive through NCDE? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Jennifer Lee, I know, has been working with those. So,
and so that was within the budget you submitted? No?
No, ma'am. That's totally separate from the amounts that we gave you. That's okay. A program specific to pre-K. I don't know if is Ms. Lee on, or Mr. Lane, if there's anything you want to add to that.
That would be Jennifer Lee,
okay,
who could provide that information.
But yes, ma'am, Dr. Williams, Ms. Lee has been working with NCDEE to process that information that's required.
I was just curious as to if the teachers receive bonuses as well.
They will receive bonuses once the funds process, yes.
Okay, great.
I have a question. I guess this will be for Dr. Spencer. On professional development, this is something the teachers do voluntarily, correct?
So, no, sir. And yes, sir. So in the summer, when we had our virtual conference and it was outside the contracted hours of our teachers, it was voluntary. That's why a lot of those sessions were recorded in the event that the teachers had summer plans. It was August 5th and 6th. The teachers came back the following week. Anything after that, we utilized and built into the calendar, if you recall, the 3-hour early release days. And then when we moved those, because we have our remote learning on Wednesdays, those opportunities are now offered on the afternoons of the day previously. So for instance, February 4th would have been a 3-hour early release. February 3rd is now the day that we have district professional development that is required.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So outside of the contracted time, yep, outside of the contracted time is the volunteer piece of it.
Okay. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay, if there are no more questions, Ms. Haynes, can you continue with your report?
Sure, and Dr. Williams, I'll provide an update on the 25th, if that's okay, on the NC Pre-K.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I was just curious. I know they had a stipend for teachers, like November $450 and December $600. So that's good. And I was just wondering if you all received those funds for the NC Pre-K, the teachers.
I think it's dependent on attendance, the teacher's face-to-face attendance, and there's several factors that go into the amount, I believe. But I'll get a comprehensive report for you next week if that's okay.
And question, I'm sorry, is that, and that's only for pre-K, not for the other grade levels, is that correct? What you're
Yes,
saying?
sir. It is a pre-K. It's coming straight from NCDEE, I believe, and it's only for certain individuals. It's the pre-K programs.
And that's been, okay. Okay.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is FBT 03, which is our audit report. Miss Donna Winborn. Miss Donna Winborn will be at the meeting on January 25th to go over the report and answer questions concerning the audit report. We did just want to give it to you in advance so you would have time to look over it. And she would also bring bound copies that we'll have for you, but we wanted to be able to provide you with the digital copy so you would have some advance time to review it. So the next item we have on the agenda is FBT 04, which are budget amendments. We would like to request Amendment 104, 304, and 804 be placed on the consent agenda for the January 25th meeting. So if we review budget amendment 104 for our state public fund, there's an overall budget decrease of $856,962. The majority of that is due to our restart conversion. We did receive an additional allotment for transportation, which is in that amendment as well. And then as you can see, it shores up our CRF transfers. Amendment number 304 is for the federal fund, and there's an overall increase of $2,086,732.78. And the majority of that was for CARES carryover funds. And we've also received some of our GEAR funding for student health support and instructional services. So the student health support money will help support those contracted nurses that we were able to secure with the state funds. And the student support, the instructional services will help with the learning pods. Amendment number 804 is our local special revenue fund, and it shows an overall increase of $28,663.77, which were allotments for NC Pre-K and Golden Leaf. So are there any questions about the current amendments? Okay, and a clarification from last month, Amendment 803, which included funds for NHS Northeastern's GO grant. That is for the outdoor classroom at Northeastern. So just to clarify from last month on that. The next item on the agenda on this agenda is FBT 05, which are the school fundraisers. And we also would like to request that this be placed on the consent agenda for the January 25th meeting. Are there any questions about the fundraisers? Okay. Chair Warden, I believe the next few items we wanted to request action. Did you want me to do those separately, the consent agenda items from the action items? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So that concludes our request for consent agenda items for the January 25th meeting.
Right. Ms. Haynes, are you waiting for a motion or something to have those placed on the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. We'd like to request that those items be placed on the consent agenda for the January.
Okay, we need a motion to place the items that were just referred to by Ms. Haynes on the consent agenda for the January regular board meeting. May I have a motion from the floor and a second?
I move for the items presented by Mrs. Haynes to be added to the January board meeting agenda.
I second.
Okay, and we will take a vote by roll call. Ms. Sawyer.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. It carries.
The next three items on the agenda, FBT 06, 07, and 08, we have requested that they be approved today if possible so that those projects can be started. FBT 06 is the CDWG Chromebook purchase. This is for 189 Chromebooks, which will replace older devices for literary assessments. So this is specific funding for that specific purpose.
I have a question about that one.
Okay.
Where is the funding coming from for that item? For the
it is PRC 085, I believe. It's a state allotted fund, and it is specifically for purchasing devices for those literacy assessments.
Okay, so
and Ms. Godfrey's on as well, so she may need to jump in and answer some of those questions.
Those items are specifically earmarked, the funding is specifically earmarked for devices.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that would be the reason why we did not request purchase of those from our local budget, the quarter-cent sales tax.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda, FBT 07, is a contract with Learning Environments for the Northeastern High School Bleacher Project. This is procured through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement, so it is through a purchasing agreement. And Ms. Wilkins is on to answer any technical questions that you may have about that project. Okay. And the final item on the agenda for finance is FBT 08, which is the Sylvan contract. And Mr. Lane is on to give us a little bit of information about that contract.
Thank you. Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Dr. Edmonds, board members, and guests. Curriculum and Instruction has been working with Sylvan for about a month now to put together a tutoring packet to assist our students. So students from any grade level will receive tutoring in reading, math, science, English, Math 1, biology, ACT instruction. They are also very flexible in if there are any additional areas they are willing to support that. They offer pre and post assessments. So they measure to find out where student gaps in learning have occurred. Like for math, for instance, if you don't have foundational skills like multiplication tables or fractions, you're not going to be successful moving into higher level mathematics until those gaps are filled. So while teachers are focusing on grade level instruction, Sylvan would be filling in those gaps in learning, which are very critical for our students' success. They're willing to offer hybrid instruction. So instruction would be occurring in the schools for students who are face-to-face, and it would be occurring virtually for students who are in our virtual capacity. They are serving up to 75 students per school. So that is a total of approximately 900 students who would receive this assistance throughout the district. And we have the capability to expand if there is a need and if budget supports that. They are even willing to offer students the ability to come into the center up to their capacity because they recognize the value of having some face-to-face interaction. They've been very willing to accommodate, and they will be working, if approved, working directly with the schools to set up exactly what this would look like for each of our schools. And we've been working with Michelle Tinch, who is the director of Sylvan Learning Center. Are there any questions?
I have a question, but I also have a statement. This is a very, very exciting initiative for our school system. I'm just very excited about this, and I think the parents as well as the students will be as well. My question is, how will the students be selected for this opportunity? Will it be voluntary? Will it be based on progress that they've made thus far? You know, just what are the qualifications as far as students being involved?
I believe it will be a mix, Chair Warden. If a student is interested, they will express interest to their teacher. The teacher also has the capability to suggest that students who are struggling receive the services as well. And the 75 is not stagnant. So if you're receiving tutoring and you progress to a point that you no longer need it, those groups are fluid. So that 75 could be 75 different students every so often throughout the remainder of the year.
That's great. Thank you. Also, would each school have some way of reaching out to, will they, I know they have the way to, but will they reach out to the parents and make them aware of this opportunity? I know we're making it public today, this meeting, but of course there are probably people that are not online because of work or whatever. So each school will be responsible for reaching out to parents and letting them know the opportunity is available.
Yes, ma'am, and they are partnering with Sylvan. So Sylvan is also going to be reaching out to take some of that burden off of the teachers or administration within the building. So Sylvan is taking on quite a bit more than they normally would do. They recognize the need, and we're very anxious to partner with us on this initiative.
Thank you. And
You're welcome.
Please communicate our appreciation for this partnership. And, you know, thank you to all of them for everything that they're doing. Very similar to the partnership that we have with the food bank. It's just very exciting that we have these kinds of things going on in our school system and our community. So thank you. Thank you for the hard work you have done, I'm sure.
Sure, and you'll hear more from Dr. Spencer. This is part of her presentation as well, because it's not just this. There's a multi-pronged approach to the tutoring, but I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to be quiet and let her tell you guys that exciting news. So thank you very much.
That's
Chair Warden, I have a question, please. The amount of the money that we are paying for the 75 students, is that, like you said, that the groups could be fluid, but are we required to pay for 75 students per school if we don't use those slots?
I believe that could be adjusted if we don't.
So if we didn't use them, and also too, if we didn't use them at one school by a certain amount of time, will they be able to use them at another school?
I'm sure that those slots are fluid because the early college, for example, may not have 75 because they have a reduced number of students. So we could potentially take whatever they did not, were not using and utilize that in another building.
I guess what I'm asking is, if we don't use the 75 per school, are we still like in a contract to pay them for those 75 students per school?
I think that the last conversation that I had, it would be based on the numbers, but I can get clarification on that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? That was a great question, Ms. Pereza. Actually, Bert, if there is any way that we can make sure that if, for example, Northeastern doesn't have 75 students who want to participate, then possibly funding can go to another school, which would maybe have more than 75. Is that a possibility?
Yes. If they didn't use their amount, we could transfer that number to another school.
Are there any other questions about?
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but just thinking about the amount and just thinking about how it's going to be measured as far as growth with students. So after they have participated in and they've received the tutoring, will Sylvan have some kind of, I don't know if Sylvan can do that, but how are you going to determine the growth of these students based on the tutoring they're receiving? Like we feel they will be effective. We want them to. Sylvan has been around for a long time. But then you don't want them to just be in a situation that they're being tutored and we have nothing to document that is successful, even though we expect it to be.
Correct. Sylvan offers a pre and a post assessment so that you can tell what they did not know at the beginning of tutoring, and then it shows an ending point, what they knew or what percentage proficient they would be at the end of that tutoring. And another thing that I forgot to mention, they are very flexible with the hours of tutoring. Like some students have requested tutoring to be in the evenings when they are there to work with the tutor and the student, and they are very willing to provide that as well. So, and the rate is it's a 50% discount over what it would be if it was in the center.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Lane. It seems that you've done your homework. So thank you.
Any other questions?
I do. Just to piggyback on Ms. Williams' question, for Mr. Lane, how will we get that report? Will you just have that and it's available upon request, or will that be brought to the board for us to know that information?
Are you talking about the effectiveness?
Yes.
Of the tutoring?
Yes.
Sylvan would provide that to that data to us at the end once their assessments had been given.
And then do you automatically bring that to the board, or will the board have to request that again? How does that work?
I'm sure that we can share that with the board. I have no issue with that. Dr. Edmonds, can you?
Yeah, we would definitely have that come to the board, because we definitely don't want to pay money and not see the results. And so we want to make sure we are getting a return on our investment. So that will definitely come back to the board. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we have 3 items that have been requested for action today in the Finance Committee's agenda, and those have been presented by the Chromebook purchases, the bleacher project, the Sylvan Learning Center contract. So if we could take action on those 3 items at this time, could I have a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair, I move that we take actions on the items as requested from the Finance Committee.
And we would need a second.
I will second that.
Okay, Tammy, take roll call vote, please.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Aye.
Thank you. Carries.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We have one more item in finance, and that's from Miss Rhonda James Davis. This one will also require action on the part of the board, and it is about the FFCRA. So, Miss Rhonda James Davis.
Thank you, Chair Warden. And good afternoon to Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, and Chair Warden is also the chairman of this committee, Dr. Edmonds, and board members and colleagues. Wanted to share some information that, like Ms. Warden said, to have some action on hopefully today. So the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, and that's the FFCRA, was became law on March the 18th of 2020 and became effective on April the 2nd of 2020. And so that that law was to give families, employees, extended family medical leave due to the coronavirus. It was due to end on December the 31st. So we got some information the end of December, the beginning of January, that says that leave could be extended if approved by the board. And it's only, the extension will be only for those employees who have not previously used their FFCRA allowances from April the 2nd through December the 31st. And it does not allow additional time for leave for those employees. So if we can start extending those leave benefits to those employees who are affected by the coronavirus, due to childcare or lack of childcare, or if one of our employees need to be quarantined or gets the actual virus, to those if they haven't used it already. So asking your permission to continue to extend that to our employees. Have any questions?
Now, this is leave in addition to the leave they're already granted as teachers and employees from the state, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a limit on the number of days?
Yes. So if they will get that leave, if they have to be quarantined or if they're experiencing symptoms, they get up to 80 hours of leave time. If it's because they don't have childcare, their child schools closed or childcare providers closed, they get up to 80 hours, but at 2/3 of their normal pay. But they don't have to take their leave in order to get it. In addition, they can get up to 10 weeks of paid expanded family and medical leave at 2/3 their pay because of childcare, because they don't have childcare due to the same reasons. So again, it was due to end. It ended December the 31st, but if approved by the local boards, we can continue to give it to those covered employees, and those are the employees who have not used that time already. And so I do ask that you consider that for approval.
Are there any other questions from the floor?
Ms.
I
James.
have a question. Well, go on with yours. Go on, whoever that is.
Oh, sorry, I was just Pam. Rhonda, what's the funding source for that?
This is, maybe Ms. Hayes, could you help? It's from the federal government.
It should be their current funding source, though. We won't have to use any additional funding for that.
They just won't be charged their leave.
All right.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It would be the same funding source that they're currently being paid from. We just wouldn't charge their leave. So we wouldn't be reimbursing any of our current fund with federal funds. It would be whichever pot of money they're paid from now would be the same funds that they would continue to be paid from.
So it would be state or local? Or
no, my understanding is we wouldn't have to pay back state or local if the employee was funded from state or local. But I will be sure to follow up before the 25th and provide clarification then.
Have we used did we provide some of this leave prior to?
Yes.
So I guess I just don't understand. It's coming out of our budget, and this is just giving permission not to take it out of their
leave.
additional leave time.
Correct. But an alternate leave.
Paid, and this is above and beyond what they're usually given.
Yes.
As far as leave goes, yes, ma'am. Not a pay difference, just a leave difference.
So it will not subtract from their annual leave. This is an additional like special leave if they become ill with the virus. So this is something to support the staff.
Yes.
And this is something that, as I recall, was already in place. And this is just an extension past December 31st. Is that correct?
That is correct. It technically it ended. It was supposed to end on December the 31st, but if the board allows, we can extend it through extend through March the 31st. We don't have any information that beyond March the 31st of this year.
Unfortunately, I think with the numbers of the way they are currently, we should extend it. This is for the staff, so and this is to assist them. And we know where we are with the coronavirus. So I would think that if they are being offered assistance, and particularly this would impact a new employee who would not have those days to take if they were to become ill with the virus, that can affect you from 1 week to 1 month or more.
And so, Dr. Williams, just for clarification, if someone started with us after December the 31st, they would not qualify for this particular.
Oh, this is just for the
ones who, yes, were eligible during that time period. We can extend it to them, but
that's not good. They're the ones who need it. Right? Well, no, the others can't have it. No, I'm just kidding.
And I agree with you, Sheila. I was just trying to understand where the money would come from, and do we have the fund? If it's coming from our budget, do we have the funds to support this through March, the end of March? And
right.
And maybe I was not understanding correctly in the beginning, but wanted to make sure that we vote for this, that we do have the funds to support this through the end of March, and knowing that we don't know how much of this we'll have to use. And you said the criteria needs to be that they are either caring for someone with COVID or been diagnosed with COVID, or like their child care center closes, don't have child care center closes. It has to be related directly to COVID within
yes,
their household.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Archuleta, I think you had a question.
Ms. Perez's question sort of answered what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any more questions? So if none, I do ask that the board take action so that we can.
I will, if there are no more questions or discussion on this item, I will call for and a second.
I second.
I'm assuming that was a motion.
Oh, we needed a motion.
Could you offer the motion again?
I move that we extend the leave provided for staff.
And I'll second again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let's take a vote. Ms. Sawyer?
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Mr. George Archuleta, Miss Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Mr. Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Aye. I like aye.
and Mr. Archuleta.
Yes.
Thank you. It carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. And that concludes the Financial Committee's report. And we will move on to the Personalized Education Committee. Ms. Pereza.
All right, thank you. We have Dr. Amy J. Spencer to present to us.
Good afternoon, board. Colleagues. Today I'm presenting the academic updates as requested in the December Board of Education meeting. And I'll wait for the slide to start. Yep. In the past, ECPPS has had challenges meeting academic expectations. COVID-19 has exacerbated those challenges and also illuminated inequities across our district. I would like to thank the curriculum and instruction team for their support in disaggregating the data for this presentation. First, we are going to review iReady data, then high school EOCs and post-assessments, early graduates, seniors on track to graduate, followed by the summer jumpstart programs from the elementary and ECMS. The first set of data we are going to look at is iReady. The first table you see is the district-wide elementary school benchmark data from the beginning of the year. At the top of the slide is the key for looking at the tiers. As you may recall, the first 9 weeks, all grade levels were in remote learning. The beginning of the year benchmarks for students in grades K through 8 were given at home. The elementary students are currently in the testing window for middle of the year assessments. Consequently, we do not have comparative analysis from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year for iReady at the elementary level at this time. It's important to note that the elementary and middle school benchmark data is not used as a grade. Rather, the information from these assessments guide classroom instruction and help teachers with data that guides them in planning intentional and focused instruction for each student. The next table illustrates data from the middle school, beginning of year and middle of year benchmarks. Keep in mind when looking at this data that some of the students who took the assessment at the beginning of the year may not be the same students who took the assessment at the middle of the year. So if you look at the tables, you can see at the beginning of the year, there were 1,218 students district-wide at the middle school level who were eligible to take the ELA assessments, but only 1,000 of those assessments were taken. If you look down to the middle of the year, you notice that there are only 908 students that took the test, comparatively speaking to 1,000 at the beginning. Additionally, while all students took the beginning of the year assessment at home, some of the students were face-to-face at middle of the year. Because the students were face-to-face for part of the second 9 weeks, we can give a cautious comparison at the middle school level of face-to-face versus remote instruction. It is important to remember that the students were not face-to-face for the entire second 9 weeks when looking at the data to compare beginning of year to middle of the year assessments. And we also need to remember that students at the middle school who are face-to-face are coming back 2 days a week. This also does not reflect those students who first came back face-to-face and then determined they would go back to all remote learning. I want to share with you the assessment data from the high school EOCs and post-assessments. Remember, state guidance said we could not require students to come in and to take the EOC or post-assessments. All of these assessments had to be given face-to-face. Next slide. As of today, these are the numbers of students who were eligible to take the test, the number who took the test, and the number of students who will test outside the window in the spring. The fall EOC testing outside the window is open for fall semester students until June 30th and June 18th for post-assessments. When we receive the official testing results from these assessments, the results will be shared with the board. This slide provides the information for the post-state assessments. Again, these are the numbers of students who were eligible to take the test, the number who actually took the test, and then the number of students who will test outside the window in the spring until June 18th. This slide shows the number of early graduates last year and this year. As you can see from the table, the numbers are similar from last year to this year. The next set of data shows the number of students or seniors on track to graduate. Principals, assistant principals, counselors, and teachers are working with students to ensure those who are at risk have every opportunity to graduate on time. The elementary Jump Start program was held in July. Students were identified to participate in the program based off of iStation data. There were approximately 248 students who qualified for this program across 7 elementary schools. Invitations were sent to parents for their students. Only 25 parents indicated they wanted their children to participate. That was concerning, so personal phone calls were made to each student's parents to invite them to attend. After the phone calls, 110 parents indicated their children would participate, with 104 students attending. During this summer jumpstart, teachers provided one-to-one sessions with students 4 times a week for the month of July. Those times were reflective of when it was convenient for the parents, and so they were at all different times. This next slide illustrates data from the elementary jumpstart program. And since elementary did not have middle of the year benchmark data, the data that you will be looking at are grades from their quarter 1 and quarter 2. Remember, the students who attended the remote elementary summer jumpstart were considered below grade level in reading as identified by the state benchmark assessments. The next 2 slides will illustrate data from the ECMS Summer Jumpstart program. While the state required the Jumpstart program for elementary, the program at the middle school was a pilot program that Principal Moore wanted to model after the elementary school Jumpstart program. Using improvement science, Principal Moore and her staff wanted to start a small pilot and work with those students who were identified as needing additional support. Students participated in intentional focused small group instruction based off of iReady assessment data. Additionally, they participated in social and emotional learning. Additional information will be shared about how ECMS is using the data from this pilot moving forward in the next section of this presentation. This slide shows the number of students who participated in the math portion of the program. Again, grades from quarter 1 and quarter 2 from last year to this year were used to show if the students overall were improving in their pass-fail rate. This slide shows the number of students who participated in the ELA portion. Again, the students were compared against their own Q1 and Q2 from last year to this year. Looking at this data and the iReady assessment data to capitalize on what worked in the summer and to be proactive, Principal Moore and her staff are starting a larger scale intervention of what they did in the summer. It will include 2 evening sessions a week from 6 to 7. 242 students have been identified, and information went home to the parents of these students with the report cards. This program will begin on Monday, January 25th. This is just one example of how principals and teachers are working together using data and improvement science to ensure students are successful. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, prior to COVID, ECPPS had academic challenges. COVID-19 has exacerbated those challenges and has illuminated inequities. Using the data shown and other data, principals, teachers, the curriculum and instruction team, central services, and the community are truly working together to support students by filling in the data identified gaps and accelerated learning. This support has 3 components: academic support, professional development, and social and emotional support. The academic support has 3 facets: learning pods, partnership with Sylvan, which Ms. Haynes and Mr. Lane discussed earlier, and school tutoring. The first facet is learning pods. The goal is to have the learning pods up and running in February. What is a learning pod? This is an ECPPS and community partnership designed to provide supervised and structured learning for ECPPS academically at-risk students whose parents work and/or lack adequate connectivity or support for their children in the remote learning environment. Free community center sites have been identified as our partners. These sites will provide supervision through volunteers, and ECPPS will provide tutors for tiered support for the students. It's important to remember that these pods are not to supplant ECPPS instruction, but to supplement and support the students. The students will engage in remote direct instruction from their ECPPS teachers while in the learning pods. Volunteers and tutors will provide the support and supervision of the instruction provided by the classroom teacher. ECPPS will provide tutors to each free partner site, personal protective equipment for the tutors, volunteers, and students, sanitation supplies, and school supplies, as well as meals. Hours of operation will be from 8 to 12. The second facet is Sylvan, described earlier by Ms. Haynes and Mr. Lane. There will be 75 students per school who will be eligible to participate, remembering that those students can move if you don't have enough, as Mr. Lane suggested, at the early college, that those numbers could then be given to another school who may need more. Support will be offered face-to-face and remote. It will be based off of identified needs, and students' support will occur 2 days a week per student for 45 minutes each day. These groups are fluid, again, with some tutoring occurring during the day and some after school hours, as well as at the Sylvan Learning Center. The final facet is school tutoring. Teachers and administrators develop tutoring plans to meet the needs of the students after school, and some schools are discussing Saturday academies as well. Principal Moore's ECMS program that I referenced earlier, beginning on January 25th, is again one example of how the teachers and principals are working together to offer academic support for students. We also want to support and build the capacity of the teachers and administrators in our schools. Research suggests true professional learning occurs when it is ongoing and sustainable. While the pandemic has illuminated many challenges, it has also created opportunities and ways to reimagine and rethink professional learning. These are the ways we are providing professional learning opportunities for our teachers. As I said before, we did a virtual conference in August. We've had follow-up in the first week of school with additional PD after that virtual conference. Additionally, we are using 3-hour early release days for the district PD. We have offered choices that support state and district initiatives, including MTSS, online teaching and learning, Canvas, and then using improvement science and continuing the district's work with schools that lead. Additionally, we have asked for surveys and information from those who are in the trenches. The principals and the teachers have provided that information, principals most recently, so that we can provide additional support during their PLCs. Data from surveys from teachers, principals, and parents determined the planning and implementation of professional learning opportunities for our teachers and administrators. Our last component is definitely not least. We believe it is imperative to support the social and emotional well-being of students and staff. ECPPS is working with the North Carolina Resilience and Learning Project through the Public School Forum of North Carolina. You have heard about some of that work in previous board meetings. Additionally, principals received a self-care module to share with their staff, and follow-up support is scheduled in February. The district also contracted Rashawn Miller, a mental health change agent and licensed counselor, who provided professional development for administrators and 2 other professional learning opportunities for teachers. ECPPS is also one of 21 districts who will be partnering in the inaugural year of the North Carolina Education Corps. The North Carolina Education Corps is the governor's initiative in response to COVID-19 to support schools and to help mitigate COVID's negative impacts on education. A North Carolina Education Corps member will work for and with ECPPS to curate social emotional resources as well as mental health resources for students, staff, and parents. This concludes my academic update. Are there any questions?
Ms. Spence, I have a couple of questions. If we could, if we can go back to, I guess, the beginning of your presentation with regard to
Absolutely.
the testing. So I guess as of today, like, how would we break this down to, I guess, measure the success of the system as it stands right now? Like, how are we breaking this down?
Okay, so this is a question I think that is not just for our district, but across the state and the nation. What you want to be able to do is compare apples to apples, right?
Yes.
And what you don't want to do is be able to compare things that aren't exactly accurate. For example, we do have iReady data from the beginning of the school year. The last iReady data that we had was December of 2019. That was given face-to-face, but it was also at the middle of the year. So we have iReady benchmark data at the beginning of this year, but we can't really compare that to the iReady elementary data from the middle of the year last year because they're two different things. We could potentially be able to do that once we have the iReady data from our middle of the year. But then we also need to remember that some of these were given at home, and there have been questions about the fidelity of those assessments and the potential of parents that perhaps unwillingly helped their students during those assessments. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. Additionally, we can look at report cards, but then you also need to remember that they are learning different standards. They have different teachers. So there's those differences as well. So we are in a conundrum with the data that we have and how it was assessed and how we can use that with data that we don't have from the spring or the beginning of last year. Additionally, we were using iStation data, which is what the state required as far as ELA with our elementary students. And that is no longer required, and we are using iReady. The comparison was easier with the middle school students because we could do that comparative analysis from the beginning to the middle to see how they were growing. So if you go to the next slide, Tammy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now you can actually see. So when you're looking at tier 1 for the ELA, that's the grade level. So that's saying those students, 25% of the students are at grade level. Then I want you to look at ELA for the middle of the year. That has increased by 2 percentage points. So one could say that those students have grown 2%. However, when you're looking at the numbers of the students and the tests that were taken and those that were not, those
Right.
could be the same students or potentially may not. And that's where we would have to go in and look at every single individual student to be able to make a comparison for each student to themselves. And schools are doing that. They're looking at that data, and that's where they're using the PLCs and the improvement sciences. How can we get better at getting better? You know, what is it that's working for each individual student and what is not? And how can we support them better? And again, that goes to that approach where we're looking at it and we don't want to be reactive and wait until there's a final assessment at the end to say, oh, this was a train wreck or this was really great. What we want to be able to do is look at it all along using every single piece of data that we have. Attendance data, are they attending or not? But that also is with each individual student. You know, do they have connectivity? Do they not? And that's where that academic success with the community embracing our students and providing those alternative learning sites in case there isn't connectivity or there isn't support at home, or the Sylvan where they're reaching in and they're going to provide that foundational level with their assessments, and that's going to be a layered approach, and then the teachers and the staff also providing additional tutoring too. So we're trying to envelop our students with the most support that we can so that they can be successful using the information that we have.
Okay. Another question regard to middle school.
Yes.
When we look at the face-to-face and remotely, are we getting any, like the tests that we're not taking, are we getting any feedback from the student, the parents, as far as like the students who aren't taking these tests? Because obviously that does impact the numbers that we're going to receive that we're looking at.
Right. And that would be a question for our middle school principals who are on the call.
Good afternoon. So on behalf of Elizabeth City Middle School, what we have done is we've sent out letters to all of our families. If their students are on track, we send out congratulatory, your child's making adequate progress. We also mail their report cards, their iReady data, along with that letter. And then there are students who are 1 or 2 grade levels behind. Those students also received a letter that was mailed, inviting them to our tutoring session that will begin on Monday. And then for students that are 3 or more grade levels behind or did not take the assessment, their parents also received a letter inviting their children to the summer school program that we will have to get a better picture of where they are academically and to support them as it helps to make those promotion decisions. We want to get an entire snapshot of how their child is performing. Again, if they have not taken the assessment, it is hard for us to be able to determine where they are in that growth. And so we've been and still reaching out. We have approximately 85 students currently signed up for our tutoring program, and parents are still contacting us to get their children signed up. So we are super excited. Out of 242 students that are eligible, it looks like we will have a little over 100 students that are signed up. So now our issue is making sure we have adequate staff to meet those needs. But that's a wonderful problem to have. And so we are working diligently to get that area solved. But, you know, just kind of communicating with parents, the importance of having that data. This is an opportunity outside of end of grade tests that give it one snapshot, like just how a child is doing on one particular day. Using the iReady data, we have 3 different points to look at, which is their beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. I think I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Farmville. He'll correct me if I'm wrong, but we are also now going to be implementing monthly progress monitoring. So once a month, as we move to the end of the year, we will continue to progress monitor in ELA and math to ensure that students are making the adequate growth. And if they're not, we have an opportunity to stop and work on those skills so that we aren't waiting all the way until May or June to help a student achieve. So,
Mr. Walton, Chair Warden, if you don't mind, if I could say a couple words here. I do appreciate Principal Moore sharing what's happening at Elizabeth City Middle School. Our principals are going to do a short presentation on kind of where they are in their schools with their consolidated school improvement plans. And so you'll get to hear more about what individual schools are doing for the work that we're doing at the district level and looking at the beginning of year, middle of year. That's why you see kind of the big overarching picture. And we've been working here at the district level, as I say to our staff, we are the ones that are the experts. So what are we doing to support our schools? And so that's why you see the 3-pronged approach that that Dr. Spencer shared earlier. But we can certainly get additional data points if you need those from the district level. But thank you, Principal Moore, for jumping in there and sharing what you're doing at Elizabeth City Middle. We appreciate you. I don't know if that helped, but if you have a follow-up question, we'll certainly try.
It did help. I did have a follow-up question as well. As we break down the data, like that 12-1 to 12-18, we look at face-to-face to remotely. Is it possible to break that down as to the number of students who actually took the test face-to-face, the amount of students who took the test remotely?
Absolutely. And I think that would certainly be something that Dr. Spence and her team can do.
Yes.
Is to be able to look at it, because we definitely want to be a clear line from student A to student A, and not a group of students to another group, so that you all can actually see what does that look like. Excuse me. So we can definitely get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
And one follow-up question, Mr. Walton, would you want that by the individual schools or from a more district perspective? Just so as Dr. Spencer is moving forward, she can bring back to the board what it is that you would want to see.
Individual school sounds better, just so we can have all the information.
Thank you.
Yes, and we can
have that.
Yeah, and we can probably, if Chair Warden is okay, have that on the agenda for Monday so that we can get that information to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
That's fine.
Now, I have one question. This is Daniel Spence. That Jumpstart program, is that only what Ms. Moore was doing at Elizabeth City Middle School? Is that the pilot program, or are we doing that throughout the district?
Okay, so the Jumpstart program at the elementary level was funded through funds that were given to us. They were very restrictive, so there were certain students that had to participate, if you will. And that's why the information was of those rising 3rd and 4th grade students. What Principal Moore did is she piloted with her students something that mirrored what the elementary was doing. And again, using improvement science where they say start small. And so she did it with those, like that small group of students, about the 25, I believe it was in math, and the 21 for ELA. But then piloted that to see, how does that work? Is it working? How do we get better at getting better? Which is why, using the information that we have and that she had, that she would want to go ahead and start doing that during the school year for those students, to ensure that we're supporting as we go along. And to reiterate what I had said, and she also said, you don't want to wait till the end. and then go, oh, we need to do something. It's all along, and principals and everyone here is looking at that. And that's why that community support is so important through Sylvan and those learning pods, and why that professional learning is so important. It's that three-pronged approach from central services where we can really wrap our arms around student success.
Okay, because it looked like based upon the reports there was some success in that program.
Yes.
So have we made plans to implement that throughout the other middle schools and elementary schools and high school level even, or is that something that, like Dr. Edmonds mentioned, that each school is going to discuss what they're doing, or
each school will discuss what they're doing, because each school is uniquely different. And much like I said, for the professional development, we look at the information that's provided from those in the trenches. So when we did a data dig, we did ask for principal input as to what it was specifically that their students needed. So, you look at this data and then they dug even deeper. What is the root cause of this? What are we seeing in our school? Where do we see gaps? And then they've reached out to our team to say, hey, could we have professional learning in our PLCs for this? But then in addition to that, they're also creating those tutoring plans and those things that work with their students and their families that they've seen success with.
Okay. So that's how the learning pods and the Silver Learning Center thing, that's how all of that came into place because of what we've seen happen in the elementary jumpstart and ECMS.
Absolutely. So if you look, well, it goes beyond the Jumpstart. So Jumpstart is just one data point, right? But we also looked at what colleague Mr. Walton asked the question about the data and how can we tell? We also really have looked across all of the schools at attendance and hotspots and areas. And remember, I said there have been some inequities across our district. There are some areas that have better Wi-Fi service than others, and hotspots, work, and some hotspots don't work. And then, Ms. Godfrey can attest to this, that certain hotspots work in certain areas, but not others. Additionally, parents might not have the support at home. And so that's where we use that data that we had to then go forward with the discussion and the partnership with those community sites to be able to have learning pods. So there could be connectivity and there could be support through tutors and volunteers to be able to help those students with that, and also the parents at home. So we're using all of that data, not just assessment data, to be able to make those decisions. I hope that answered your question.
And Mr. Spence, I'll add a little bit to that about the kind of evolving of the learning pods. As we've looked at how are we supporting our teachers who are face-to-face to be more effective at the blended instructional piece, we were also thinking, how do we support those families whose parents don't want them back in the building, but they are okay with their students being at their local church or at the local community center, with people that they typically may see in a week or when they attend church service. And so we were thinking, how do we capitalize on partnerships that we already have within our community to better support our students who are not coming on our campuses every day? We had an opportunity, myself and Ms. Sawyer, to go to the YMCA and look at what they were providing in their learning pods. And it was pretty amazing to see that work that was being done. And so we've been able to partner with them and talk with them, and Edgecombe County schools are also implementing learning pods to better support their students who are in remote status. Because as we're getting better with the face-to-face in a blended environment, we want to see how do we better support students that are in remote status whose parents are not comfortable with them being back on campus. And we've also heard from parents, can we have some support for our student when Mr. Lane reached out to Sylvan and they said, absolutely, that's something that we can do. We can provide some support for students when the parent is in the home. Because what we're hearing from parents is that it can be kind of stressful to know that your child is at home and you're at work and the child should be getting online. And I've heard parents say, I've had to run from work to go home and get them logged in because they keep getting kicked off. Or, is there a way possible to cut down on that stress that we can have some after hours? And so that's some of the work that we've been able to pull in with Sylvan. And so we're looking forward to partnering with our community partners around the learning pods piece. And we know that it will get better as we go along, as we survey our parents, as we implement, that we'll get better with those as we move along. And this is one of those things that once COVID is over, is this something that we continue to have some type of after school learning pods or something like that on the weekends to support our students? And so, as Dr. Spencer said, it's much bigger than the tests themselves, but also just how do we provide the supports that we know that our students need? It can be social emotional support, it can be academic support, but what is it that our families need and how do we get that to them?
Thank you.
I have a question, Dr. Spencer.
Yes, ma'am.
Could we going back to the information about the high school and the number of students who did and did not take those courses or those course exams? I know that we had a situation where there's some confusion about coming on campus and taking the test and then not coming on campus and taking the test. And, there were some who were planning to come even though they were in remote status. What efforts are we putting forward to make sure we get these kids tested as soon as possible? I know we have the extension to the end of the year, but especially with the number of kids, the concern and the data that was presented about some that may be at risk for not graduating, and again, the efforts that we are putting forward to get the kids tested as soon as possible while the coursework is still fresh on their minds.
Right. So the principals are working on those plans and are communicating with the parents when those students can come in. Parents can also contact the school to come in whenever they feel comfortable with that. But additionally, we also have a program called Edgenuity that our district had purchased previously, and we continue to use. And so for those students, there's also some modules and some learning opportunities to help those students remain current, if you will, with that information and to have some opportunities for review. And so in talking with the principals, that's one of those options that those students will be able to have, because like you said, there is this window of space between the time that they actually ended their course and then they would be able to take that end of course, if you will. So they do have plans, and there are supports for the review and tutoring for that. Yes, ma'am.
Right, like if they need like a review or something, if it's been a long period of time.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Perez, I know I'm going to say this absolutely incorrect, so Ms. James Davis is going to jump in and help me, but it's the CTE end of course test. What are they called again, Ms. James Davis?
Misuse is on, but they're called post.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's called the NCCTE post assessment.
Post assessments, and those have to be the window for the CTE post assessments, and I think it's February 15th.
They have recently changed that 2 days ago, and it's now June 18th.
Awesome. Thank you, because I know we shared with the board previously that it was February 15th.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Now it is June 18th.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Dr. Spencer? Okay, that concludes our report. Chair Warden.
Thank you, Ms. Pereza, and thank you, Dr. Spencer. Good job. Okay, we're going to move on to Ms. Houston, Chair of the Policy Code Committee.
Good afternoon again. And we'll have a report from Ms. Tammy Sawyer with regard to fall policy updates and webpage development. Ms. Sawyer.
Thank you, Committee Chair Houston. Good afternoon, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members. I come before you today to request the board consider approving the policy updates in your packet. I would also like to share our process for reviewing policies for board consideration. All policy updates are sent to us by the North Carolina School Boards Association. Once received, policies are divided up among our chief officers and lead staff members for which the policies are relevant. They review and make any necessary additional revisions or recommendations. Should you have questions regarding any of the policies before you today, I will share your questions with the appropriate team members and will provide information for you prior to approval next week. With that being said, I am requesting that the board consider placing the following policy updates on the consent agenda for approval on January 25th, 2021. PC01, the fall policy updates, and PC02, 3227/7322, webpage development. These policy updates were shared with you in previous board packets. And that concludes the policy request and updates for today. Any questions? Thank you. I would need a motion for that to be placed on the consent agenda. Thank you.
I was about to do that. That's where I started. As committee chair, I think I can make the motion. I move that the policies as described by Ms. Tammy Sawyer be placed on the consent agenda for the meeting on January 25th. Can I get a second?
A second.
Is there readiness, a question? Did I hear on readiness? I didn't. Okay, I thought I heard someone readiness, but I guess I didn't. So, Ms. Sawyer, we need a roll call vote.
Thank you, Committee Chair Houston. Pam Pereza?
Yes.
Thank you. George Archuleta?
Yes.
Virginia Houston?
Yes.
Daniel Spence?
Yes.
Rodney Walton?
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. It carries.
Unless there are other items from any other staff, that completes my report.
Thank you, Committee Chairperson, Ms. Houston, and Ms. Sawyer for that report. And now we're going to move on to Global Citizens and discuss middle school athletics. We're going to have an update. And Mr. Archuleta.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you all for the great job. First of all, we're going to hear from Dr. Edmonds and Miss Rhonda James Davis on middle school sports. Dr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Mr. Archuleta. Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, board members and community members and staff. I'm going to share with you an update on middle school sports. We did get some of the information that the board had requested that we bring back before you today. I'll start the presentation with reviewing the guidance that we've received from the Amateur Youth and Amateur Sports Program, and then I'll move from that to context of Elizabeth City and where we are. And we do have our principals, our middle school principals on the call, as well, on the meeting, as well as our middle school athletic directors. So would like to thank them for being a part of the meeting. And so just a brief overview and reminder of the guidance that we received from the youth and amateur sports programs. and DHHS strongly recommends playing the sports that are socially distanced. And so I quickly go through what are considered the green sports. So Tammy, you can go to the next slide. These are the sports that are considered green sports, and that means that they have very limited contact, and the athletes can maintain social distance. The yellow sports are the ones that you see here, where there is some contact and that the athletes are not socially distanced, but not for prolonged times will they have contact. And then for our red sports, and those that are listed here, are the ones where there is close contact and prolonged close space with each other, with the athletes. So maintaining social distancing is a little difficult with these particular sports. And what the CDC and DHHS has said is that this is the guidance that they provided, but the local school districts, the boards of education, will determine whether or not middle school sports will be played, and that they would consult with state and local health officials and determine whether and how this can be done, and adjust for any unique needs or circumstances, and consider the high levels of COVID in the community. And so at our last meeting, the board did ask us to work with the middle school principals and athletic directors to get their plans together of what it would look like to participate in these sports. And they have done that. So each middle school has, you can stay on that slide, Tammy. I'm not ready to go. I know I'm going to talk about it later too, but if you can hold tight. So the middle school principals did submit the plans along with their ADs, and we did have them sign the statement saying that, you know, they would be held accountable to ensure that certain things would happen. And so we're at the point now where we're bringing this information back to you for the spring season, which is March the 1st through May the 14th. And the four sports that we're looking at is cheer, football, soccer, and volleyball. There you can go. And the schools and districts that are in our conference are Camden, Perquimans, Dare with First Flight and Manio, and Currituck with Currituck and Moyock. And of course, we have our two middle schools that are part of that conference as well. In all of the other school districts, their students or their athletes are participating in the sports. And of course, the athletic directors in the probably could give us more information on that. And so the plans were submitted for cheerleading, football, soccer, and volleyball. We've reviewed those at the district level, and the next step will be sending those to the health department to get feedback from them. But the plans have been submitted at the district level. And the board also asked if we would talk with Centera to see if we could potentially have an athletic trainer for the middle schools. Ms. James Davis did follow up, and what she found was that Dr. Marsh is our contact for Centera, and to have two athletic trainers, one per school, it would be a hybrid model, very similar to what we have at the high school. The cost would be approximately $50,000 for the school district, so $25,000 per athletic trainer. And the hybrid model is because it's a split like we do at the high school, where the cost is split 50% with the school district and 50% with Centera. So the athletic trainers are with us part of the time, and they are with Centera part of the time. And Dr. Miller did share that one of the challenges would be is actually finding an athletic trainer at this time of the year. I think Ms. James Davis said that they'd had one posted since, I think, December, could have been earlier than that, and
Yes.
they have not found anyone to fill that position. Are you saying something, Ms. James Davis?
Yes. So Dr. Marsh said that they this time of the year will probably be hard to find. In addition, Dr. Miller said that I believe he's had one posted for his office since August that they hadn't been able to fill. So it was August and not December.
Thank you. That would definitely, August would definitely be a long period of time. Thank you for jumping in, Ms. James Davis. And so what was shared is that they would post the position to determine if there was interest, but did not see it being feasible to have the high school athletic trainers work with the middle schools because we've signed that MOU and it would require changing that, but also just the services that are provided at the high school, the trainers need to be there whenever they are practicing or have an event. And the other question that the board asked us to check into was the middle school participation. And so the middle schools did survey their athletes and to find out what was the interest. And once they had who was interested, then which athletes were actually eligible. And so you can see for football, what the interest is versus the eligibility at both of the middle schools for soccer, volleyball, and cheer. And the eligibility requirements you can see are listed below the chart. And its attendance must have been in attendance 85% of first semester, no more than 13 days, must pass 5 out of 6 courses for first semester, have the sports physical form dated March the 1st or later, March 1st, 2019 or later, and attend the parent meeting for those once they make the team. And that part hasn't happened yet. It says to be announced. And so I think this is the end of the presentation, but we do have our athletic directors and principals and myself and Ms. James Davis to answer any questions, any additional questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions or any discussions?
What was the response rate from the schools based on the number of questions, like response rate from how many you surveyed for the athletes? In other words, if you sent out 20, but only 11 responded on a team, and then only 7 were eligible. Because I don't.
So I will have to look at our middle school principals to help me with that one, to let us know how your surveys went out.
So for Elizabeth City Middle School, the survey was sent out to students through their emails, and it was also sent out to parents and students through Parent Square. We placed a call through Blackboard Connect, letting parents know that their children had received this information in their email and that it was sent out through Parent Square, and we had approximately 65 responses.
River Road Middle School sent ours out through email to the students, and we received 46 responses, 46 to 48 responses. We sent that out with the requirements or eligibility requirements for students to participate.
Are there any more questions? Chair Warden, if you think about it, excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a question. Since the athletic directors and the principals are on, I'd just like to get some feedback from them in terms of how they feel about starting the spring sports. I know that's not necessarily a determining factor, but I'd just like to have some input from them.
Well, I would say that, to be honest, that we work at the pleasure of the board. So whatever you decide, that's what we'll do. I think right now, the situation that we're in, as far as the pandemic and as far as the performance of some of our students, I think we really need to focus on the academics and help students understand that this is something that, we can do, provided you've done what you're supposed to do. Because if we look at the eligibility, that's that's a signal right there that something has to be done. And the focus on academics really needs to, in my opinion, be the priority. But again, whatever the board, directs us to do, that's what we'll do. And we do realize, and I do understand, I love sports like everybody else. And I know that sports plays a big role in students and their school involvement. I do understand that. So I am supportive of sports, so just to make that clear.
I do have a question. I guess this is just out to whoever wants to answer it. It's my understanding we need to have the ones that take care of injuries. I forgot what you call
The
them.
athletic trainers, Mr. Archuleta.
Thank you, Dr. Edmonds. Yes, that we do have to have the athletic trainers, and as of right now, we don't have any. Is that correct?
That is correct for the middle school, but the person that Ms. James Davis talked with said that they would post it as quickly as possible if we were to get approval from the board, but we're not very hopeful that we would be able to find an athletic trainer at this time of the year.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one more question. What is now of coaches for the spring sports in terms of their availability?
And I think we had that on a slide. I don't know if anything has changed since the last presentation, but Tammy, if you would go down, I think we kept that slide in there about, I think the middle school ECMS did not have a basketball coach for the girls. Is that right? Principal Moore?
We do not have a cheer coach.
A cheer coach.
Basketball is not in this season.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to find out if there had been an update from the last reporting.
Okay.
Question.
Could I see the numbers again for the eligible and the ones that are interested, I guess? Well, I guess my question would be, like, do we have enough to even fill certain teams? And if the answer is no, like the team members that would need to be eligible for a full squad, do we have enough that's going to be able to fill a full squad?
And I would need our coaches to help our athletic directors. Do we have enough based on the eligible students that are here to play the sports?
On River Road's behalf, it looks like to me right now volleyball would be the only sport that would carry enough eligibility.
Far as Elizabeth City Middle, soccer and volleyball, we would have enough to be eligible. Soccer would depend on, we have to have 4 females on the field. So that is something we would have to look at also to see if we do have at least 4 females to be on the team, be on the field.
So would it be feasible to have those 2 sports for both schools and not the other 2? And I guess the cost associated with putting these events on, like, is it going to be cost effective to have those 2 particular sports? I guess as an estimate or a judgment call.
With that question, we also need to talk about limited participation as far as fans or people who would be interested in attending. Volleyball is inside, so that's going to be limited numbers. So you won't have the ticket revenue for that sport, not a huge one. Soccer is different. That's outside. So I think the numbers increase. Am I right? Because it is an outside sport.
Yes.
Okay. But again, we go back to the availability of trainers. I can tell you, as a former soccer coach, you're going to definitely need, I'm not saying you don't need you need a trainer for every sport, I believe, but you definitely need one for soccer. And how are we with coaches for those particular sports? Did you hear the last part of that question? I asked, how are we with coaches for those particular sports, soccer and volleyball?
But prior to this, we didn't have athletic trainers at the middle school level. This is new to COVID.
Yes.
And we, as a board, never said that we would require trainers. We said that we wanted to know the feasibility of trainers at the middle school level.
Yes, Pereza, Vice Chair Pereza, the board did say last time that athletic trainers are not required at middle school, but because of COVID and the amount of care and guidance that the athletic trainers are providing at the high school, and we know that our middle school students would need guidance as well, if not more, than the high schools. If I'm not mistaken, that was the conversation that came up about the athletic directors. Athletic trainers. And I think the other question.
Sorry, Chair Wharton, I was just trying to clarify because it kind of seemed as if didn't remember us saying that it was required.
Yeah, we were asked, administration was asked by the board to see if what would be the feasibility of having an athletic trainer, because those that are at the high school have been so instrumental in developing plans, but also being at the events and at the practices with the athletes.
That was correct, Ms. Pereza. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding about the trainers. It's not something that is required, but it's something that's recommended. Am I correct about that?
I'm not sure if it was recommended to have an athletic trainer in the guidance, because the guidance says that certain sports that the recommendation was not to play them because of the high risk. Right.
Okay. Again, participation numbers are pretty alarming there as far as being able to validate whether or not we are going to have these sports. So
I have a question. With these numbers looking like the number of interested and the number eligible, I wonder if there's a lot of children or our students or parents who just did not respond to the email or the letters or the information that was sent out that still are interested in playing, that maybe once we say yes or no, they're going to play, then they may show up to the interest meeting or the first day of training, how we do that, that those numbers might increase. So I'm afraid if we make the decision at this point to base it off of what responses we've gotten on the survey, we may miss out on some children or some students who maybe have not responded to the emails who would be interested in playing. Or maybe somebody did not get the email. So their response is based on them not getting the email. So I don't know if that was a question or more of a statement that we shouldn't just I wouldn't just base it off of this, because there are some that may not have responded to the email for whatever reason, but they may still willing to participate in the sport. Does that make sense at all?
It does.
Okay. I know maybe it didn't go across kind of like I wanted, like it was in my head. It didn't come out. It didn't come out like it was in my head, but I think hopefully I got the point across.
It did, Mr. Spence. And as a matter of fact, this could be due to the high number of emails that I received. But as a parent, I need to go back and look and see if I received one, because I haven't seen one. and I have a middle schooler. So, you know, as parents, everything is through email, and so much information comes out that it's easy to overlook when you have someone like me who has 3 different email addresses, that one for the board, one for personal with my students, and one for work. So, you know, I don't recall, and that's probably my error of overlooking it perhaps, but I certainly think that you make a good point.
My email from River Road went straight to the students, so it didn't go to the parents.
That makes me feel better.
And,
but you guys
and
did
part of the
something.
reason, well,
You
part of
did
the
parent
reason
portal.
why
I'm sorry. You did parent portal, right? I'm
that
sorry. Go
was
ahead.
ECMS. I think it was ECMS.
Yes, ECMS did Parent Square to send it out to parents.
Right.
I still want to go back to one thing that I didn't quite understand. The thing on the trainer, do we or do we not require a trainer?
So the trainers are not required. Well, I guess I should have the ADs answer that question. Are trainers required at middle school? I know we were discussing that because of COVID and the high numbers in the community, and knowing that we want to keep our athletes safe. So, athletic directors.
Trainers are not required, but we are one of the few districts that are playing middle school sports right now that does not offer or does not have athletic trainers at the middle school level. Most of the other schools in our conference are already providing that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We do have athletic first responders that serves that purpose in place of the athletic trainer. That's what the athletic first responder does.
Yeah.
And I can say middle school is not required to have the athletic trainers, but in my experience, dealing with different types of injuries and being athletic director and coach for many years, there is a need for athletic trainers at the middle school level because of things are constantly changing, and there are different classes that support those changes and give out information that we as athletic first responders are not available to attend those different classes to get those updates. So I can say myself, I do stay in contact with the athletic trainer at the high school for different information.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Are there any other questions that you have for the rest of the board has?
Okay, one last thing from me, and hopefully I'll make sense of this. Let's take this into consideration, the fact that there's a possibility that the interested numbers may not have all received or responded back to the email or the message that was sent out. So there's the potential that there could be more that are eligible. And not to give anybody more work, Mr. Stallings, more, I will call you coach. But I don't want to give you guys any more homework. But if we needed to cross-reference the students from 6th and 7th grade last year who would have came up, like, would you know who's those kids that would potentially want to play football, soccer, volleyball, cheer, to kind of cross-reference them to make sure that, one, they are eligible, as we're waiting to find out if they're interested or not. Did they meet the criteria that we're requiring them to meet to be able to play sports in the spring? So we have an idea, because I don't want to make a decision today, like Mr. Spence said, that would affect students who would then get their information in a little later than now and want to participate and meet the criteria. So if we could have an idea of, like, and again, this goes back to giving you guys an additional step to look at, like, can we find out who these kids were that played last year? Do they meet the eligibility criteria for now if we were to turn on spring sports? Has their physical been done? Like those things, if those things in order, the numbers go back up and the interested goes up and the eligible becomes higher and we can't fill those teams, then that's something that I wouldn't want to make a decision on now if we would find out a different answer later. Coach Bay, I'm sorry, I was getting stuck on you. I was just gonna call you Coach, like I said. My apologies.
No problem, Mr. Walt. No problem.
In addition to that, Mr. Walton, I think one of the things that has always kind of been, my motivation for wanting us to offer sport is it being a motivator for students to perform better academically. And if we get that opportunity, yes, it may not help for this semester, but it may motivate them to step up and do better in the classroom for next year. Because we do look back, correct? And we look at grades. And so, a lot of these kids, and you look at eligibility versus interest, that concerns me. And the motivation that it can give some students to perform better and to have that coach mentor to encourage them to do their best.
I agree with you, Ms. Peraza.
I like to hear Miss Moore's opinion. We heard Mr. Fonville say that maybe we should concentrate on academics right now. I would like to hear Miss Moore's opinion, please.
I agree with Mr. Fonville. There's nothing that I would want to add.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moore.
You're welcome.
Is Chair Warden, is there any, do we need to take any kind of action now?
I would say that we need to table that for our board meeting. And if you guys want to have, as you indicated, to the trainers or to the athletic directors and principals, go back and, refigure their numbers, make sure that you've contacted everyone, possibility that might want to participate, that we could take a look at it then.
I agree with you, Chair Warden. Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Sorry to correct. I got a question if I can before we do that. Is it possible? I don't know. Is it possible that we can go and make a decision to say, okay, like Mr. Walton said, that there may be some kids, and let's give it some time, give the athletic directors time to find this out. But how would it work if we made a decision, voted today, and let's say hypothetically we voted, okay, yes, let's do middle school sports, and we still find out that there's not enough kids eligible? What would be the problem in still saying yes or to sports today, and find out at that point we don't have enough eligible, then we just can't play that sport? What would be the problem with that?
There's not a problem with that. As far as I know, if
you're muted now, you went muted.
Those at the school level would need to let us know if that would create a problem for them. But what I was saying is give them an opportunity to touch base with those persons who may be interested, maybe they didn't respond or whatever, and come back with more definitive numbers so we can make a better decision at our board meeting.
Yeah, and I understand it, but that's what I was saying. If it was hypothetically said, yes, let's do sports today, and the ADs do their due diligence and do their research, and let's say they find out that there isn't more that's interested and eligible. And so at that point, we can't have that sport. But to me, that just saves time from keep going back and forth again before we make a decision. So those coaches, those athletic directors can go ahead and start really moving forward if they have those numbers, instead of waiting to another board meeting and then we have to make that decision again. It just, I don't know.
I agree, Mr. Spence, because if you look at like soccer, they have 22 interested at EC Middle and 20 eligible. I mean, there's a sport right there that would probably be ready to go. Even maybe their football team, a lot of their actually, volleyball as well. I don't know how many you need for subs and that kind of thing for those sports, but it would give them the green light to plan. And then again, if they don't have the numbers, then they just would not be able to. And that's happened at other schools in other sports.
Yes, it has, and that's why I was saying if they would go ahead and if we give them the green light to go ahead and touch base with these people, with these athletes to kind of firm up the numbers, then we can move forward at the board meeting. I'm not talking about going back and forth. I'm saying we can make a more definitive decision that day about each sport.
I agree with you, Chair Warden, because I wouldn't be comfortable right now voting yes until we see the complete numbers, if they can get them together. And the other thing I think we need to keep in mind is we've heard from both middle school principals that think we need to, make academics the priority right now. I'm talking about right now. And we do not have trainers, and yet by one AD, I believe, his opinion was we need one. And you yourself, Chair Warden, said that with soccer, especially as a coach, you think there's one needed. So I think we need to take that in consideration.
I think we're doing a lot of going around, and I think we've addressed this several times. So I'm just hoping that we can just go ahead and make a decision today, because this is just going on, and it looks a little messy a little bit. So if we can just make a decision today, and if a week later we find out we don't have enough eligible athletes to play in those sports, whatever sport it is, then we just don't play that sport. Let's just go ahead and make a decision today, so we don't have to keep going over it. That's just my opinion. I don't know. So I think we should. I don't know.
I think the issue with the athletic trainers is not going to get resolved by next week, though, Mr. Archuleta, because as Dr. Edmonds said, they would have to post that position. And, I agree that they are very important. And as Mr. Stallings said, I believe it's Mr. Stallings said that there are several districts within our conference who do have athletic trainers at the middle school level. So by all means, it would be something for our board to move forward with, perhaps regardless of COVID and regardless of what we're going through. I think that needs to be, it would be my suggestion that be a separate topic if voted on, because that's different to me than approving to be able to play sports because of the contractual nature we would have to enter in with Centera.
Yes, Ms. Perez, I agree. I see what you're saying. I agree with you. Chair Warden, what do you think? Do we vote on this? I'm for waiting. Our regular meeting's only about a week away. I don't see why we just can't wait that 1 week, look at numbers. If they're higher, we say yes. If they're not, we say no, or whatever.
I'm gonna start doing one more thing before we get to that point. Like, Mr. Spence did make a good point with what I was asking the athletic directors to look into. If we did announce today that sports for the spring were going to be beginning, we announced that it doesn't cost us anything. So as long as there's no penalty for announcing it, and we've said it. Now, if students get the email or get from the grapevine here that they're having sports in ECPPS, that way those numbers then would trickle in without having to wait for a second vote. So we could have those numbers coming in. And if we didn't have the numbers, the point is moot. We wouldn't have to worry about that sport anyway. The academic component of it, grades past 5 out of 6 courses for the first semester takes care of itself, in my opinion. Obviously, if you're not eligible academically, you're not going to. So those students still need to be nurtured as far as, making sure that we're looking at their academics who wanted to play, but unfortunately at this time, you're just not eligible.
So what I can do, I guess, if I'm hearing this correctly, you guys are going to meet again at your regular meeting on the 25th. Is that correct?
Or not. Or it could be now.
Okay. So what I was going to say is I can resend out the survey and gather, see if it's more interest out there and who's eligible. And maybe that can be updated to our chart by that time.
Well, Ms. Fonville, let me ask you this question. Do you have an issue with us moving forward with, let's just say, like, for example, hypothetically speaking, we're moving forward with sports. Same email goes out letting the students know that sports are, available to River Road Middle School students. They still need to inform you that they want to participate.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Chair Warren, so do I make a motion that we vote on this?
Yes.
I make a motion that we vote on participating on middle school sports. Just looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, Miss Tammy, I guess by roll call we're going to vote.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
No.
Virginia Houston,
No.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
No.
Ms. Sharon Warden,
No.
the vote does not carry. Chair Warden.
Okay. Miss Warden will go on and get an update on the transportation from Miss Amanda Hill. And I want to thank Dr. Edmonds and everybody that gave us the update on middle school sports. So now we'll hear from
Before
Amanda
we
Hill.
move on, can we have discussion? Is that appropriate now? Chair Warden, I have a question,
Yes.
a comment. Okay. I just need, I'm in the middle of the road with this because I certainly see the benefits for our students. And so I think that they probably would perform better if they were on the team, okay? If they were on a team, if they were active. And I certainly understand that. I just would need to know a little more as we discuss regarding numbers before we move forward. I have seen many teams trying to come together and they're in and out and they can meet and then they can't play with this school because now they're out and it's been back and forth. I'm sure you all have been reading the same information. So I just need to know a little more with the numbers as far as moving forward. So when I vote, it's one vote rather than I can vote for this sport but not this sport because we just don't know. So I just wanted to kind of state my opinion on that, even though it's not that I'm totally against it. I'm just in the middle of not really knowing.
And I understand that, Dr. Williams. I think the concern is for some of our students to have that opportunity. And if the board had voted for it, it may have been more of a concrete statement of saying that, yes, we're going to allow sports. And if that team didn't have enough eligible or enough interested, then as Mr. Spence said, we wouldn't offer those. I think it concerns me that we're the only district in our conference not offering sports to our middle schoolers now in the fall and in the spring.
Well, Ms. Perez, we are going to discuss this next week again, and
No, we're not. We just voted on it.
Ms. Warren, is that not correct that we can look at the numbers next week?
I was under the impression that the vote was to carry us to next week to get the number. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that was, yeah, I was under the impression that we were making a decision on whether we would decide to vote today or to wait until the next week.
Yeah.
Correct. That's
That
what
was
I
my
thought.
mistake.
Well,
Was that in the motion?
That was not what I thought we were doing. I thought we were voting yes or no for sports, not yes or no whether we're going to vote.
Right. So Mr. Archuleta made the motion. So can you clarify your motion?
Yeah, that's what I thought also, Pam.
Okay, my motion is that we will vote next week on middle school sports. I guess that's how I would do it.
You said we're going to vote now on middle school sports.
I said but I was under the impression that we were just going to go ahead and wait till we heard from the numbers, Pam. I messed up. I should have said that we'll wait till next week and then we'll vote on middle school sports. I guess that's the way I should have put it.
The motion today, sorry, the motion today was to vote on participating in middle school athletics.
Okay, well, I messed up then, Tammy. It should have been table it till we see the numbers next week.
So can he rescind the vote or the motion? Is it appropriate?
Chair Warden?
yeah.
Yeah, because it was in error. So. Right. So I think that you can rescind the vote. I would have to check Robert's rules, but I think that you can because your motion was in error.
Well, it was in error because I voted wrong because I misunderstood what I guess.
So are you withdrawing the motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'll withdraw the motion.
So, Dr. Williams, I'm not 100% positive, but I think because the board has a vote, he probably motion on the first.
I agree.
Rescinding this one and doing whatever he's planning.
Right. He has to rescind it first. Yeah, that's correct. He has to rescind it.
I rescind it. Okay. I make a motion. I rescind my vote. I do. I rescind my motion.
Okay, Mr. Archuleta has rescinded. Mr. Archuleta rescinded his motion and will send a motion in order for us to move forward.
Yes, ma'am. I make a motion that we wait till our next board meeting to see the numbers and look at it clearly to go on with middle school sports. Is that better?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I thought that if he's rescinding, that would only be with board agreement. So I thought he'd have to move to rescind his vote second, and then we would vote on the rescind in order to make it a clean motion. I guess.
I agree, Ms. Houston, since we all voted on it.
I'm sorry.
I just said I agree. I think that's what needs to happen because we voted on it. Am I correct, Dr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
The motion is rescinded. We would need to vote on that. And then his new motion and we can vote on that.
So he made the motion to rescind. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, was that Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay. Ready for a roll call?
Yes, ma'am.
Pam Pereza?
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
The motion to rescind the previous motion carries.
My apologies to the board. Now I make a motion.
George, before you make a motion, can I have a question?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. My question is simply this: to table it, do we need to have a motion, or just can we table it to the next till the 25th?
I would say we could table it and ask for our athletic directors and principals to come back with final numbers.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that.
Because I mean, it's me, I'm new. I don't know. Let me give that disclaimer. I don't know if we would need to vote to table an issue or not.
No, we don't need to vote on that. We can just table it, bring it back for a vote on at the next meeting, with the understanding that our athletic directors and principals would bring back more firm numbers.
Okay. Chair Warren, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Again, my apologies to the board for that, but and to Miss Hill, who has been patiently waiting. She's going to give us an update on transportation.
Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, Dr. Edmonds, board members, and a lot of my colleagues on here. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out tonight. I know prior to Christmas, you had heard that I was losing quite a few employees due to retirement, some moving away, and some just couldn't handle the job. So I was down quite a bit of people. As of today, I have everything covered so that we can go and move forward come Thursday to get all these lovely students in our county to school to get their education. And we're looking okay as of right now. We're still got applications out there. We're trying to get people hired, but send them our way, please. Any questions?
I don't think there's any questions. I want to thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you.
Chair Warden, answer.
Okay, we are now going to move. We are going to adjourn this open session and move into closed session to discuss a personnel issue dealing with Superintendent Edwards' upcoming resignation. So everyone should log off and.
Chair Warden?
Yes.
We will resume open session, so we won't adjourn until we come back and close out.
Okay. Okay. It's fine. All right. And at this time, we will go off, get on our link for our closed session, and then we will come back to open session.
Do we need a motion, Chair Warden, for closed session?
Yes. Sheila, could you offer that motion, please?
I move that we close and enter into closed session.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Pam Pereza?
Yes.
George Archuleta? I think he left. Virginia Houston?
Yes.
Daniel Spence?
Yes.
Rodney Walton?
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay.